Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And a warning that this episode of Doin Time contains audio images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died and graphic discussion of deaths in custody and also distressing content. I just wanted to, before I start the show, I wanted to talk about something really important. Violent Nazi attacks have happened on Camp Sovereignty, and it's a sacred site, and there are call-outs for people to come and watch at Camp Sovereignty and to go over there to make sure that there are no further attacks. The sacred site was attacked on Sunday afternoon by neo-Nazis, and a lot of people have been injured, and they've been attacked by black-clad neo-Nazis armed with pipes, poles and branches. Feel free to have a look at the video footage on the internet and also to have a look at the media release put out by Lydia Thorpe, First Nations Independent Senator. This is Marissa. I'll be with you for the next hour, but I just wanted to give a call out for people to go down to Camp Sovereignty, which was created by Uncle Robbie Thorpe, who does a couple of shows here. He's also First Nations as well. I'll talk more about that later. First up on the show, we will bring you an interview with Anneliese Cooper, Acting Senior Lawyer at the Human Rights Law Centre, who will discuss a new report showing the price women whistleblowers pay for speaking out. Then we will hear from David Glanz from the Refugee Action Collective, who will give an eyewitness account of what happened at the so-called Australia.First rally in Melbourne. After that, we will cross over to Queensland to Uncle Wayne Coco Wharton, who is also a First Nations activist, and he will yarn with us about what happened at the so-called Australia.First rallies, and he'll also speak a little bit about the attack on Camp Sovereignty. But for now, we will speak with Anneliese. I'm just going to give a quick intro. Women who blow the whistle are vital to exposing wrongdoing, but are paying a heavy price for their courage, according to a new report released by the Human Rights Law Centre. Women Speaking Up, Gender Dynamics in Australia's Whistleblowing Landscape analyses the first year of client data from the Human Rights Law Centre's Whistleblower Project, Australia's first specialist legal service for whistleblowers, finding that women are more likely to speak up about the endangerment of people, while men are more likely to report fraud or corruption. Although men and women suffer reprisal at the same rate, women are more likely to face harassment and bullying in the workplace because of their whistleblowing disclosures. And these are a few quotes from the excellent media release put out by the Human Rights Law Centre. So I'd like to welcome Anneliese Cooper, Acting Senior Lawyer at the Human Rights Law Centre, who will tell us about this and more, highlighting the new report. Hello, Anneliese. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Marissa. Lovely to speak with you.
You too. Yeah, I had to give quite a long intro. Sorry about that.
No, that's no problem. You did a very a very good job.
Thank you. So, Anneliese, did you want to just introduce yourself and also just talk about what's happening in this arena?
Yes, sure. So I'm an acting senior lawyer at the Whistleblower Project at the Human Rights Law Centre. And so every day I speak with clients who want to speak up about wrongdoing and are really concerned about the toll that might take on their professional circumstances, their economic, financial and psychological well-being. And so what our team does is we speak with people and we give them an indication of ways they can speak up lawfully and safely and try to remove some of the barriers for them doing that. What you can see from our recently published report is that women pay a huge price for speaking up about wrongdoing. So I'm sure your listeners have heard a lot of recent stories about the prosecution of high-profile whistleblowers like Richard Boyle and David McBride. That's really dominated headlines in recent days. They're both men, but in our experience and from what we're seeing working with our clients every day, women are actually speaking out about wrongdoing all the time. So to give you a little bit of an idea about our report, we found that actually roughly 60% of our clients in our first year of operation were women. And that's really important because I think sometimes women or people with gender diversity don't necessarily think of themselves as being whistleblowers because they don't fit that sort of traditional whistleblower that we've been seeing in the news. But actually women are speaking up about wrongdoing all the time. And it's really important that they do that so that we can have a safe environment so that institutions can be held to account and so that human rights abuses aren't happening in the dark.
Absolutely. And the report makes a number of recommendations to better protect women who blow the whistle. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So what we see with our clients, something we see every day, is that at the moment, whistleblowers are navigating really complex and overlapping laws, and often that's without support or adequate protection. And as a result, they often maybe report to the wrong regulator or the wrong oversight body, or they speak up internally, and ultimately they're just not protected and they might suffer reprisal or detrimental action as a result. So one of the big things that our organisation pushes for is what's called a whistleblowing protection authority. And this would be a landmark reform to make sure that whistleblowers are protected and provided support throughout that process. So ultimately, it would be a federal authority that would make sure that if you wanted to speak up about wrongdoing, something that you'd seen that you wanted to speak up about, you could go to the Whistleblower Protection Authority and understand where you should go. It would be like a one-stop shop so that they could point you in the right direction. You would be able to receive legal advice and psychological support, and the Whistleblower Protection Authority would be able to take steps to make sure that you don't suffer detriment as a result of speaking up. And this would be landmark reform to make sure that whistleblowers are empowered and protected and supported to speak up.
What would be an example of a whistleblowing act? You talk about, in the media release, it talks about human rights abuses in Australia, for instance.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So when we talk about whistleblowing, I mean, we help a very vast array of people who are trying to speak up about wrongdoing. But ordinarily, whistleblowing is someone who comes across information in the course of their employment that they're then concerned about, and they need to escalate that either to their managers or to a regulator or sometimes also to the media to draw attention to that wrongdoing and make sure that people and institutions with power are held to account. So we've seen lots of instances of women in particular doing this. So one of the examples we point to in our report is the example of Tony Hoffman, who was a nurse working in a hospital who noticed negligent and unsafe practices by a surgeon and ultimately spoke up about that wrongdoing, which was obviously really important for the safety of those patients. We've recently, you may have seen one of our clients, actually, Julia Delaforce. She very bravely spoke up on a 60 Minutes episode about systemic wrongdoing and misconduct that she'd witnessed and been victim of during her time in the Defence Force. And we also see other women whistleblowers as well speaking up about the mistreatment of children in detention centres, for example. So there's a huge array of different issues that could be that people could speak up about, and ordinarily it's in the context of your employment.
And what about women in prison? Would they be able to whistleblow?
Yep. So I think that depends on a few factors, like your jurisdiction and the type of conduct as well. So it's actually, unfortunately, quite a complicated question, and that's part of the reason why we think we need a whistleblowing protection authority, because if those pathways weren't clear to you, you could go to that authority to ask those questions. But we have seen, for example, people speaking up about wrongdoing in child detention centres and drawing very important attention to those human rights abuses.
I think the women in prison thing would be for a whole show.
I'm sure it would be.
Well, there are a lot of complexities. I mean, on this show, we often look at Aboriginal deaths in custody, for instance, and obviously women who die in custody, the dead can't talk, basically. But I mean, I suppose the ones that have been wronged in terms of medical negligence or, abuse in prison, it would be very, very interesting for the Human Rights Law Centre to tackle some research about that at some stage.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the first report like this that we've published. We've only been in operation for 2 years, and so there's absolutely more research to be done in these areas. There's very few reports talking about this sort of thing, and we're very keen to do more research for sure.
It's an excellent report, and I'm certainly not taking away from that, but it's really more about perhaps going further and having a look at, people in prison as well. But it's really an excellent report, and basically the unjust prosecution of high-profile men whistleblowers have dominated the media landscape, hasn't it, in recent years? But women are blowing the whistle as well, just as frequently, and they're not really in the media, are they?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that was really the catalyst for this report. We really wanted to draw to people's attention the difficulties that women in particular are facing in being able to speak up about wrongdoing, and also just the vital importance of women's voices in speaking up. You can see in our report that women are actually more likely to speak up about wrongdoing that causes endangerment or mistreatment to other people, and men are more likely to speak up about financial corruption and more white-collar crime issues. And those things are also obviously really important. But when women are speaking up about human rights abuses and are really worried about the effect that speaking up is going to have on them, that's really concerning, because these are issues that the public has a right to know about. Absolutely.
So what would you say, as a lawyer at the Human Rights Law Centre, what would you say to a woman that wants to expose wrongdoing?
Well, I think my first thing would be, please go and get legal advice, because and that could be from us, because these laws are really complex and really difficult to navigate. And unfortunately, if you don't follow them correctly, even though they're so difficult to navigate, there can be really serious consequences for your employment. And sometimes you can face prosecution, like what we've seen in the media with David McBride and Richard Boyle, and it's really concerning. So the first thing I would say is always get legal advice and always try to educate yourself about the right way to speak up, so that you can make sure that you have protections and that you feel supported. I think that would be my absolute main takeaway.
Anneliese, thank you so much for coming onto the program. Can you just direct listeners to the link to the report at the Human Rights on the Human Rights Law Centre website?
Yes, absolutely. So I really encourage your listeners to go and have a read. I'm sure that plenty of your listeners would relate to some of the issues that we talked about in the report, and I hope they would find it interesting. All you have to do is go to the Human Rights Law Centre website, and you can find specifically there's a page on the Whistleblower Project, and you'll be able to find a link to our report there. And also you'll find there a link to our secure inquiry online platform, where if you want legal advice from us about maybe your rights with respect to whistleblowing, or you want to understand what you can do, feel free to click on that link and provide us with an inquiry, and we'll see if we can help you out.
Thank you so much, Anneliese, and I'm sure we'll have you back for future updates.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. And that was an interview with Anneliese Cooper, acting senior lawyer at the Human Rights Law Centre, speaking about whistleblowing and how women are often have a lot of courage, but it's not really portrayed in the media. She talked a lot about some really interesting stuff. Feel free to have a look at the report.
The Black Lives Matter movement is not going away here or overseas. It gives me hope seeing the numbers of people that turn out to these Invasion Day demonstrations in Melbourne. It gives me the understanding that we will win, folks. We will succeed.
You're listening to Radical Radio on 3CR, 855 on your AM dial, 3CR digital, and podcasting and streaming on 3cr.org.au.
And in case you've just tuned in, this is the Doin Time show, 3CR Community Radio. And I'm now going to be bringing you another interview with David Glanz. And he's done a number of things in activism. I believe he's from the Refugee Action Collective. Racist anti-immigration protests under the slogan March for Australia were held nationwide on the 31st of August. David Glanz will speak to us shortly about giving us an eyewitness account. He will join us to give an eyewitness account of what happened at the Melbourne so-called Australia First rally. Hello, David. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you for having me again.
Before we begin, David, and I'm going to give a content warning to 3CR listeners, you may or may not be aware that Camp Sovereignty was also attacked by neo-Nazis.
Yes, I am aware. I've seen the footage, which is absolutely horrifying, and I'm told, or I read online, that 4 people were injured, including one woman who had to go to hospital for treatment. So I think it's an indication that this rally was never just some, it wasn't about participating in a debate about migration levels. It was a rally of racists, and the Nazis took advantage of the rally, may well have helped organise it, and rode on the back of it to commit violence against Indigenous people and their supporters. And I think it's a warning to all of us about the need to organise.
Absolutely. And before we begin, I just wanted to give a call out once again. I did give a call out at the beginning for that we need people urgently to go down to Camp Sovereignty and keep watch, as Nazis have still been scouting out the area yet again. Independent Victorian Senator Lydia Thorpe has put out a media release, and she says that violent Nazi attack on Camp Sovereignty should be investigated as a hate crime. So, David, I'm wondering if you could just start off by giving us a little bit of an analysis of what this rally is about, or the rallies, and talk to us about what happened yesterday in Melbourne.
Well, I think the racists have begun to feel more confident to raise their heads, and there seems to be an indication that the Nazi National Socialist Network, the NSN, may have played a role in calling national demonstrations yesterday, supposedly against mass immigration. We saw, unfortunately, something like 6,000 racists on the streets in Melbourne, similar numbers in Sydney and others in all the capital cities, in smaller numbers. And it's extremely worrying. And it allows the Nazis to find new friends. The leader of the Nazis, Thomas Sewell, in Melbourne yesterday, spoke to the rally in front of Parliament. And not everybody may have understood who he was, but they cheered his message. And this is very, very scary stuff. I think we need to understand this didn't come out of nowhere, that the mainstream parties and the media have been fomenting a moral panic about migration levels now for quite some time. Peter Dutton, when he was still leader of the Liberal Party earlier this year, pledged the Liberals to cut migration by 100,000. Labor criticised him, but then pledged to cut migration. They've cut back on the number of international students, and they're in the process of trying to pass further legislation to make it easier to deport people, and they're spending $400 million on buying Nauru as a place where they can deport potentially hundreds of people. Now, these are the kind of messages that the racists and the Nazis really like, and their attitude is, well, that's a good start, but we want to go much further. And I think that's what yesterday's racist rallies were about. They weren't all Nazis, far from it. There was probably only about 30 NSN members there, but they were all racist. I actually ended up speaking to quite a number of them as they left. I was marooned in a tide of racists coming down from Parliament with their Australia flags wrapped around their necks. So I actually ended up speaking to 2 or 3 of them, including at least 2 wearing union shirts. And what I got was a real mishmash of conspiracy theories, general suspicion of the government. What I didn't get was hard racism, but I know lots of other people heard and discovered hard racism amongst the crowd. There were people campaigning against Freemasons. There were people campaigning for Jesus. The CFMEU guy I spoke to was a sovereign citizen and an anti-Semite. But it was all mixed. I spoke to a guy in a Railtran bus union shirt, RTBU, and I said to him, how can you wear that shirt? Because you can't organise a strong union unless we unite in the workplace, black, white, Asian, Arab, Indigenous, whatever. And he said, oh, yeah, I've got no problem with that. We're all mixed in the workplace. We all join the union, but I'm just unhappy with the government. And I think that gives you a very quick cross-section of the Cooker philosophy, the conspiracy theorists, the hardcore racists, the fuck in or fit in or fuck off type slogans that were being raised, and of course a Nazi element to the crowd. But let's not freak out. We didn't have 6,000 Nazis on the streets yesterday. 6,000 racists is one too many, 6,000 too many, but they weren't all Nazis. On our side in Melbourne, the weekly Palestine rally started earlier and was turned into an anti-racist rally, and I would estimate about 5,000 of us marched through the city. And when we were united and together, that was very powerful, because I think we wanted to make clear to the racists that the streets are not theirs and that they don't represent the views of the majority of people, and we wanted to drown them out. Unfortunately, the rally got split up. Some of the organisers sent people in different directions, and we lost some of that impact. But the 5,000 people who turned up should be congratulated. And I think the important thing is we want to make sure it's 55,000 next time the racists show their faces on the streets. And that means reaching out to migrant communities, some of whom were very scared about yesterday, and I can understand why, to unions, some of whom Trades Hall told people, don't go to the rally, but we need them to take one step further and say, now we will organise for an anti-racist rally. I think we need to reach out to people in and around Labor and the Greens, because we need to unite, because the Nazis, and they are the hard edge of that rally yesterday, the Nazis are the enemies of all of us, and that's the basis on which we can unite against them.
David, I'm really glad that you've spoken about the conspiracy theories, and you've made some really important points here. And I suppose in response to that, I wanted to actually read out a very interesting quote from Senator Lydia Thorpe's media release where she says, I understand some people may have attended these rallies out of frustration about cost of living or housing, crises that governments continue to largely ignore. But we must be clear, standing with Nazis and racists should never be acceptable. And she says this march for Australia was never about ordinary people's struggles.
That's true. It was called as a racist roar against migrants, and it's very incoherent whether that we're talking about new migrants or old migrants. But having said that, there were people on the rally whose starting point was concerns about housing. Housing was a particularly strong issue. Now, they're being taken by the racists in the wrong direction. The racists are trying to get them to blame migrants for the housing crisis. Our job is to take people in a progressive direction and say, well, actually, we've got a housing crisis because we have negative gearing and capital gains tax exemptions that favour landlords over tenants. We have tens of thousands of empty properties which could be used. We desperately need to tax the rich to build more public housing, not just housing in general, but public housing for people who are the most vulnerable. And
exactly.
What I got from talking to some of those people yesterday, and they were remarkably unaggressive. I think the Nazis, if they'd come across me, would have been aggressive, but these people actually wanted to talk. What came across was they don't believe change is possible, so they're punching down against migrants and refugees rather than punching up against the Albanese government and against the rich, the powerful, and the corporations.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
Important to flip people around. If we have mass struggle for real change, some of those people, not the hardcore, but some of those people will come with us once they sense that there is a better way of making real progress.
And of course, the media didn't really talk about that stuff. It talked, about violence and, other, about the warring factions. It was quite shameful and disgraceful the way the media portrayed it more as a fight. What was the police response? Because, I'm wondering whether the police protected that side and didn't arrest people when they became violent.
I don't know how many arrests there were. I get the impression there were very few. The police protected the far right insofar as they put a barrier across the road to stop our march getting to them. But I did see the police capsicum spray people on our side, anti-racist, but I also saw them capsicum spray racists as well. There were flashbangs used, but I think that was used against our side. So it's a little difficult to say definitively the police were 100% against us, but they clearly would not allow us to go in and confront the racists face to face. So in that sense, there's no question they were there to protect the fascists and the racists, because they're not all fascists, to facilitate them getting through the city. When we tried to march up to Parliament to confront them there, we were blocked off. So the police went out of their way, basically, to make sure that we couldn't get close enough to the racists to make it clear to them that these weren't our streets.
And yet, look at what has happened with Camp Sovereignty, where the police allowed those people to walk away, and they were not arrested, and there were a lot of injuries. And in fact, I'm just going to let listeners know to listen back to Black Bloc. There was a 2-hour broadcast today with Robbie Thorpe, who actually established Camp Sovereignty in the first place, where there were lots of people giving testimonies about what happened there and the massive injuries. It beggars belief, David, what happened at Camp Sovereignty, and with no protection at all for people.
No, and it was atrocious. And obviously, if people, the anti-racist crew, had known in advance that this was a possibility, obviously thousands of us would have gone to defend Camp Sovereignty.
Of course.
They took advantage of people being in the city. I now realise in retrospect, I actually saw the Nazis heading in that direction without, of course, having any idea where they were actually going. I was on the corner of Little Collins and Swanston, surrounded by people coming down the hill and basically not in a position really to go anywhere. The police had roads blocked off. So me and a couple of other people just stood there and either observed the racists or, as I say, I engaged a few of them to try and get some idea of what was in their heads. I saw the Nazis come down from Parliament direction towards Swanston Street. I don't know where they went. But then 10 or 15 minutes later, they charged back up the hill. And now I realise with the power of hindsight that they were then heading up towards Camp Sovereignty. So I think Thomas Sewell and the rest of the so-called leadership of that mob wanted to promise their supporters a bit of what they would regard as fun, what we would regard as racist thuggery.
Stealing Aboriginal flags and stomping on them, and 4 people required medical attention and 1 had massive head injuries. David, I'm going to have to leave it there. Are there any concluding comments?
I think we need to organise in defence of refugees and defence of migrants and defence of Indigenous rights. So that means defending camp sovereignty, but it also means coming out against the Labor government, who is actually trying to deport more people from this country than the Nazis could dream of. And so the Refugee Action Collective is planning a snap action later this week against Labor's latest deportation bill. We'll be discussing tonight exactly what that will look like. So please check out our Facebook and Instagram pages and join us on Thursday lunchtime for an anti-racist rally targeted at the Labor Party, who are actually trying to deport people right now.
David, thank you so much for coming onto the program, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, many thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye. And that was David Glanz from the Refugee Action Collective in Melbourne, speaking about the so-called First Australia rallies. And yeah, pretty soon we're going to be speaking with Uncle Coco from Queensland. But first, I'll bring you an announcement.
So it's up to us, the people. We need a treaty in this country. We need the end to the war in this country. And the only way we can do that is through a peace treaty. Not the one you see in Victoria, not the one you see in Queensland, not the one you see in the Northern Territory, because they talk treaty and still lock our people up. They still kill our people. They still desecrate our land and our water. A treaty means peace. A treaty means equality. And a treaty means justice. Thank you.
You're listening to Radical Radio on 3CR, 855 on your AM dial, 3CR digital, and podcasting and streaming on 3cr.org.au.
Stay tuned, stay radical.
We demand the full restoration of all Indigenous lands and resources, and we demand the immediate cessation of all forms of exploitation and destruction of our land.
We're here to remind you of our sovereignty and our original demands from day one.
It started with intentional genocide of our people around the round table in England. It's all lies here. Everything's a lie. There's a great opportunity right now to step into a sovereign, independent republic.
We demand a treaty. We demand our lands back. We demand to stop Black Death in custody.
we've got a common enemy. The same government that locks up these refugees just behind us here at the Park Hotel is the same government that's going for our rights, trying to attack the very limited gains that casuals have. And so when union activists take up the cause of refugees amongst their fellow workers, it's not an act of charity. It's about building workers' united self-defence mechanism, understanding that we're all part of the same battle.
You're listening to Radical Radio on 3CR, 855 on your AM dial, 3CR digital, and podcasting and streaming on 3cr.org.au.
In 1788 down Sydney Cove, first boat people land and they say, sorry boys, I gained your loss, we're gonna steal your land. If you break out new British law, for sure, you're gonna hang. Work your life like our combi, with a chain on your neck and hands, and they taught us, whoa, black woman, I shall not steal. Hey, black man, thou shalt not steal. Gonna civilize your black barbaric life, and we teach you how to kneel. But your history couldn't hide the genocide, the hypocrisy that was real. Why our Jesus said, supposed to keep the oppressed. I better do say to you, you white man, thou shalt not steal. Oh, yeah, our land, you better heal. Your science and technology, hey, you can make a nuclear bomb. Development has increased its size to 3 million megatons. If you think that's progress, I suggest your reason is unsound. You should have found out long ago you best keep it in the ground. They taught us, whoa, black woman, thou shalt not steal. I said, hey, yeah, black man, thou shalt not steal. We're gonna civilize your black barbaric life, and we teach you how to kneel. But your history couldn't hide the genocide, the hypocrisy that was real. Why your Jesus said, you're supposed to give the oppressed a better deal. See to you, the white man, thou shalt not steal. Oh, yeah, our land, you better heal. Me and Neil and Ripner sitting underneath that Inverpilly Bridge, watching that blazing sun go down behind a tall tree mountain ridge. The land's our heritage and spirit here, the rightful culture's black. We're sitting here just wondering when we're gonna get that land back. They taught us, whoa, black woman, thou shalt not steal. I said, hey, yeah, black man, thou shalt not steal. We're gonna civilize black barbaric lives, and we teach you how to kneel. But your history couldn't hide the genocide, the hypocrisy that was real. Why our Jesus said, supposed to keep the oppressed a better deal. Say to you, you white man, thou shalt not steal. Oh, yeah, our land, you better heal. You talk of conservation, keep the forest pristine green. Yet in 200 years, your materialism has stripped the forest clean. And a racist a contradiction that's understood by none. Mostly that left hand holds a Bible, the right hand holds a gun. That's, oh, black woman, thou shalt not steal. Said, hey, black man, thou shalt not steal. We're gonna civilize your black barbaric lives, and we teach you how to kneel. But your history couldn't hide the genocide, the hypocrisy that was real. But your Jesus said, you're supposed to keep the oppressed. Let it deal. Say to you, you white man, thou shalt not steal. Oh, yeah, our land, you better heal.
And in case people have just tuned in, this is a Doin Time show. It's approximately 4:40. And you just heard a song by Kev Carmody called Thou Shalt Not Steal. He's an excellent Aboriginal musician. And just wanted to alert listeners to the fact that we cannot locate Uncle Coco. Uncle Coco has been on this show a few times now, and we weren't able to reach Kieran either. He's actually away at the moment. But I wanted to thank everybody so far who has come onto the show, and wanted to thank Anneliese Cooper, and also from the Human Rights Law Centre, and also David Glanz. But I wanted to also take this opportunity to read out the full media release that Victorian Independent Senator, First Nations Lydia Thorpe has put out about camp sovereignty. And I mention camp sovereignty a lot because the Australia First, so-called Australia First rallies have had a really big impact for Aboriginal people in Victoria. And I just want listeners to have an idea of what went down. So I'm going to read out Lydia's media release now. Violent Nazi attack on camp sovereignty should be investigated as a hate crime. Violent Nazi attack on camp sovereignty happened on Sunday afternoon. Camp sovereignty is a sacred place maintained by First Peoples, was violently attacked by around 40 black-clad neo-Nazis armed with pipes, poles and branches. Video of the attack appears to show known neo-Nazi leader Thomas Cyril among them. The attackers, who earlier attended the so-called March for Australia rallies, stormed the hill at 5:05 p.m, punching, kicking and swinging weapons at community members, targeting women first. 4 people required medical treatment, including one with critical head injuries. The group also stole Aboriginal flags and were seen stomping on and destroying them. When Victoria Police arrived, the Nazi group walked away freely. Police did not appear to attempt any arrests or to question the perpetrators. Quotes attributed to Lydia Thorpe, Gunai Gunjamara and Jiba Wurrung Independent Victorian Senator. Yesterday's violent and vicious attacks are an act of terror against Aboriginal people in this country. This was racism out on full display and shows what my people have been dealing with for over 200 years. This was an unprovoked, coordinated Nazi attack on Aboriginal people. These thugs violently assaulted community members, including young women, in what was clearly a racially motivated attack. It must be investigated as a hate crime. The aim of this attack was to cause fear and terror in the hearts and minds of our people, and black and brown people across the country. Right-wing extremism is the biggest threat to this country, and yet police did not follow the neo-Nazi protesters to camp sovereignty and didn't interfere in their violent attacks, nor did they seem to arrest anyone afterwards. The perpetrators of these vicious attacks need to be held accountable for the harm they caused, not just to those at camp sovereignty, but also for instilling fear in our communities. Camp sovereignty was established by my uncle, Elder Robbie Thorpe, as a peaceful place for all of the community to gather, yarn and reflect. It stands on the site of the resting place for the repatriated remains of 38 Aboriginal Victorians. This violent Nazi attack was a clear attack on First Peoples and our ancestors. Racism is alive and growing in this country, and it is a direct threat to the safety of First Peoples and people of colour. To see it so blatantly on display over the weekend should bring deep shame to this nation. To see politicians and sections of the media supporting people participating in these marches is reprehensible. I understand some people may have attended these rallies out of frustration about cost of living or housing, crises that governments continue to largely ignore. But we must be clear, standing with Nazis and racists should never be acceptable. This March for Australia was never about ordinary people's struggles. It was racist, misogynistic, homophobic, anti-immigrant and anti-First Peoples. We know neo-Nazi groups exploit people's concerns and racist fears to spread hate and division. Together, we must recognise this and call it out. Racism is never the answer. It will only drive this country further down the dangerous path of division and violence towards white supremacy, which we clearly saw on Sunday. Governments, police and media have allowed these dangerous ideologies to flourish unchecked, and it is leading to violence. The Victorian and federal governments, the AFP and Victoria Police need to address this and hold those responsible for yesterday's horrendous racist attack to account. We need full investigation. This is not our national identity. It's not what we're about as a nation. We call on everyone who believes in justice to stand with us. Don't look away. Don't make excuses. Show up and stand with First Peoples and migrant communities. And that's the end of the media release for Lydia Thorpe has written. And also do listen back to the extensive coverage on Black Bloc, which is the show of Robbie Thorpe, where he interviewed people who were actually there. This is not about sensationalism. This is about calling out racism. Camp Sovereignty was attacked, and we definitely need an urgent call out for people, community members and activists to go to Camp Sovereignty and guard it against any further attacks, as there were some Nazis still scouting out that area. And I'll leave you for a quick announcement and I'll be back soon.
Hi, I'm Cam Smith from Yana Pasaran.
I'm Andy Fleming.
Andy, quick question. The commercial media, that provides a voice to marginalised communities, doesn't it? And as governments around the world take a turn to the far right, it provides a critical anti-fascist analysis?
Cam, how many times do I have to tell you this? No, that's not the case.
Oh, that's not good. So who is doing all that?
Cam, community media, including 3CR, Melbourne's community radio.
And how can we support 3CR in doing that?
We can subscribe, Cam, at any time.
By visiting 3cr.org.au or calling the station on 9419 8377. Subscribe to 3CR
and stay anti-fascist.
3CR is one of a kind. We have 400 volunteers and cover an incredible array of programming content.
From special broadcast events on Invasion Day or Trans Day of Visibility to any of our 120 weekly shows, 3CR has got your radical radio listening covered.
Subscribe to 3CR at 3cr.org.au and support independent, community-owned media free of commercial influence and government bias.
Help to keep 3CR unique by becoming a subscriber today.
Thoughts within, visions I see, daring to dream my destiny. So much sorrow, heartache we have. Comfort our children when they shed a tear. We must stand strong, stand tall. When your back's against the wall, gotta look deep within yourself. Gotta rise above it all. When no one's there to comfort you, gotta push your fears aside. Rely on your inner strength. Find a sense of pride. You gotta find. And with hope in our hearts, so as our fight's not in vain, we must must look to our elders to ease all the pain, for tomorrow is near, and we must stand as one, together united under one sun. We must stand strong, stand tall when your back's against the wall. Gotta look deep within yourself, gotta rise above it all. When no one's there to comfort you, gotta push your fears aside, rely on your inner strength, find a sense of pride. Against the wall, gotta look deep within yourself, gotta rise above it all. When no one's there to comfort you, gotta push your fears aside, rely on your inner strength, find a sense of pride. Stand strong, stand tall when your back's against the wall. Gotta look deep within yourself, gotta rise above it all. When no rely on your inner strength, find a sense of pride. Stand strong.
And this is the Doin Time show, 3CR Community Radio Doin Time show. And you just heard a song by Kutcha Edwards called Stay Strong. We're nearing the end of our show and just wanted to continue talking about some of the rallies that happened around Australia yesterday. In Sydney, there was an anti-racist protest that it was held yesterday to reject the racist anti-immigration march for Australia rally in Sydney. And I'm just going to go into a very quick announcement.
The Black Lives Matter movement is not going away here or overseas. It gives me hope seeing the numbers of people that turn out to these Invasion Day demonstrations in Melbourne. It gives me the understanding that we will win, folks. We will succeed.
You're listening to Radical Radio on 3CR, 855 on your AM dial, 3CR digital, and podcasting and streaming on 3cr.org.au.
And I'd like to welcome Uncle Wayne Coco. Hello, Uncle Coco.
G'day, how are you, Paul?
Good, good. You know, we've got about 7 minutes, but I thought we could chat quickly now and then have you back on next week.
For sure, for sure.
So tell us what's been happening.
Nothing, just it's a pretty weird feeling because as a black person, it's I went to the bank and a couple of things today, and every time I see a white person, I usually nod and say g'day, but now it's actually you're wondering whether they're Zionists or they're white supremacists or Nazis.
So we were speaking off air about what happened yesterday. Can you tell us what happened over there in Queensland? And
basically, we had young people got together. We had a anti-Nazi, white supremacist, rally in Brisbane, and the police were very, very, very one-sided. They arrested me. They were quite physical with a lot of our people. They kept pushing and putting us in really unsafe areas, and they really took the side of the white supremacists, the Nazis, and the freeloading invaders.
That is absolutely terrible. Go on.
What was really missing yesterday in Brisbane is that there wasn't a lot of older people. It was mostly young, very courageous young people. The numbers were good, but there was very, 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 wasn't a lot of blackfellas, but there was a few, and there was a lot of good allies, but there was the older people after the march, the weekend before, it was very, very shallow.
Oh, that's really, really sad. I'm so glad that you were able to do something, though, Uncle, because it's just been dreadful.
Yes, and I think it is. It's the world's changing, everything's going, and if people don't, voice their opinions and look at it and call it out for what it is, and I'm very concerned about the women that were bashed by those Nazis in Melbourne.
At Camp Sovereignty.
Yeah, this is women bashing. We're just getting through the domestic violence and that, and they have 60 young fellas attack 8 women at a camp. Is the people in Melbourne should be outraged.
It's so disgraceful. I just read a media release from Independent Victorian Senator Lydia Thorpe just before. It should be investigated as a hate crime, Uncle.
Yeah, well, I got arrested, twice, got threatened with all the laws yesterday, and here these fellas for doing nothing. And here these fellas are going in physically bashing. All the photos are there. Everyone's identified. It's all on film. And they're getting away with, physical harm.
Uncle, we're going to have to leave it there pretty soon. But what land are you from, just so listeners can know?
Okay, then.
What land are you living on, Uncle?
I'm back home in Kunya land, back in Kalamala, but it's my cousin's country, it's Kunya. My country's about 40 k's east of that, Kuma land. But I'm actually down here at Jagera country, down at Redlands, in Brisbane, doing a quick job at the same time.
Uncle Coco, I know you probably got held up, but wouldn't it be? Is it okay if you come on next week? Because I kind of
absolutely, I'd love to come down, but
no,
I know I have to get on your radio next week. But we're actually coming down. There's a lot of young men up here.
Really?
That are very concerned about what these blokes are getting away with, and I've been approached by a lot of them to go. Actually, physically, they want to go down there and sort this out.
Right. No, well, you know what, Uncle? Let's talk about that some more, and we'll get you back on. I'm so sorry. It's just the end of the show now.
No, you're right.
But we'll
be safe. Everyone be safe.
Take care, Uncle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we're nearing the end of our show. I'm going now. Stay safe, everybody.
As long as you are true fella, as long as you are real fella. All the people of different races with different lives.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.